webinar. My name's Wendy Weber, and today Sky Mylan and myself will be hosting this event. And to start off, I'd like to welcome Pauline Allardyce, one of our community and counselling trainers, and a proud Aboriginal woman who will be doing the Welcome to Country.
Thank you, Wendy. Before we begin today, on behalf of Australis College, I'd firstly like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people, who are the traditional custodians of this land on which we are gathering here today. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, for which they hold dreams, traditions and cultures of Aboriginal Australia. Thank you.
Now, just to give you a little bit of background behind Australis College, we've been delivering training for over 12 years now, and our focus is around community services and counselling. We deliver a wide range of professional development courses as well as nationally recognised qualifications via online and face-to-face classes. Our Australian-based team not only train but also currently volunteer and work in the industry, so that ensures that our graduates have real-world knowledge and skills. Now, our industry expert tonight is Melissa Ford, and Melissa's a registered psychologist. She's got a passion for working with vulnerable and disadvantaged children, young people and their families. Over the past decade, Melissa's worked in a range of areas within the community services and counselling, including child safety services, residential care services, child and youth mental health services, as well as her current role, which is guidance counsellor in a primary school. Melissa works from an attachment focus and enjoys upskilling and empowering parents and teachers to understand and support child or the young person through a relationship lens. Thank you for joining us today, Melissa.
My microphone on, that might help. No worries, it's lovely to be here.
Thanks. Okay, first of all, I just want to start by saying, what is child youth family intervention?
Right. Well, that's a very broad term. Oh, okay. That's a very broad term. That means basically that you're working in the field of humanities, involving children, young people, which could be otherwise known as adolescents or teenagers, and their families. So intervention in this context means any work or therapy or support that is put in place to assist the families, young people or children. For instance, an intervention might be a social skills group that you run out of the local PCYC that could be 6 weeks long and require a lot of planning. Or an intervention could be just taking a young person to a bowling club or a social event so they can get out and network in the community and be part of what's going on out in the community. An intervention could be doing therapy or counselling with the family or with the child individually. So intervention is a really flexible term that can apply to lots of different activities that we might do with children and young people as our clients. But often the work that we do in child, youth and family intervention is child or young person focused, which means that it prioritises and promotes the well-being, safety and development of the child and young person. However, in saying this, research shows that the most effective way of supporting the child and young person is by supporting the contexts which are around the young person. So a lot of the work within this area is supporting contexts such as the context of the child or young person's family, their carers. You might work with their school to assist them at school or their daycare, depending on their age. You might work with them in resi care. Or within extracurricular activities that the child or young person might be involved in. So not only is there that one-on-one, can be that one-on-one individual support of the child or young person, but also support within the context around them. But obviously working in this area, child safety and child protection is the baseline of what we do. So we have a duty of care to work with the child in a way that is physically and emotionally safe and promotes their well-being. And as such, we need to be really aware of the indicators of abuse and neglect and those sort of things that might happen when you're working in this area and be able to report that really effectively and efficiently. So that's a really important part of this work as well.
Great, thanks. Very clear definition there. Now, there's a sudden push in the industry to have units in the certificate and the diploma. So why is this? And What's it all about?
Well, this is to ensure that we have a residential care workforce that is of a really high quality and is responsive to the support and needs of children and young people. So the state governments across Australia have put in place a minimum qualification standard for all resi care workers. So in response to this change, we have now updated the courses to ensure that we meet the requirements for all states and territories in Australia. So it's about supporting the core capabilities across the resi care workforce. There are a diverse range of qualifications that are relevant to working with vulnerable children and young people. So completion of mandatory units of competency, which cover trauma, working in resi care and managing behaviour, will support a baseline of core capabilities for all resi care workers across Victoria and other states.
Thanks. Can you tell us a little bit more about the units?
Yeah, so the mandatory units of competency was selected following a process of mapping units of competency to the residential care capability framework. So the process was undertaken in consultation with industry training providers, community service organisations, and the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare. So it certainly wasn't taken lightly. The mandatory units of competency are, as we can see there on the slide, CHC MHS 007, which is work effectively in trauma-informed care. So this unit describes the skills and knowledge required to practice and contribute to the continuous improvement of trauma-informed care within the service. The next mandatory unit of competency is CHC PRT 009, which is provide primary residential care. So this unit describes the skills and knowledge required to provide for the care and support of clients in resi care and assist the transition from primary residential care as well. And the last one there, which is that little tiny typo, CHCCCS 009, so not a 5, it's an S, is facilitate responsible behaviour. So this unit is around the skills and knowledge required to monitor individuals, respond to behaviours of concern, deal with conflict that inevitably arises, and support responsibility for behaviour management and change. So 3 really important areas within residential care.
So can you tell me a little bit more about trauma-informed care? Because I've heard a lot about this. So if you can explain what that actually is.
Yeah, for sure. So trauma-informed practice in residential care is really important. So resi care workers need to have sound knowledge and skills in trauma-informed practice, and this underpins the delivery of quality and safe resi care. So the following strongly recommended unit, which we can see there, unit of competency complements the mandatory units of competency that we just spoke about to provide a strong understanding of trauma and its impact on children and young people. So you can see that the strongly recommended unit of competency is CHC PRT 010, working with children and young people with complex trauma and attachment issues and needs. So this unit is about the skills and knowledge required to recognise indicators of trauma in children and young people of different ages and at different stages, and to identify their needs and those of the parents and carers around them as well, which is what I discussed a little bit earlier, a very important area of working in the child, youth and family intervention.
So with career outcomes, so sorry, we've got a bit of background noise here, I do apologise. Can you just explain some of the career opportunities that there might be in this field and where people can go?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was studying, I did a whole lot of different jobs, as you will see, because I'll give you an outline of a few of the interesting ones that I did. So I really took advantage of working casually and working part-time. Sometimes I had 2 jobs while I was studying, which I don't really recommend that, but it was fabulous for experience. And I think gaining experience is really, really, really important. So any work that you can get along the way is great, including volunteering. Volunteering can be an excellent way to get your foot in the door and to have something awesome to put on your resume. A good reason why it's good to get some experience happening is that you may think that a job is a certain thing, but it turns out to be completely different. So I never thought that I wanted to work with children at all. I started working in disability support work with adults, and I just happened to get a shift. They needed someone in a shift in a respite care for kids. So I took the shift, and it totally changed the trajectory of my whole career. So I really love working with kids, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So it is really important that you get out there and see what you like and see what you don't like, because the work is extremely varied. But one work that I had there for a while, a part-time work as a housing support worker. So this is is often in non-profit organisations provide this sort of support, and it can be home, depending on the organisation. It can be a home visiting service, which it was for my organisation. We had houses in the community that we supplied for people in need, so short-term housing at low cost. So I would go out and do home visits to their home and build relationship and rapport with families that way. But often you might be working in an office, and people who are in need of housing might come in and meet with you, and then you might work with them that way as well. So this tends to be, not always, but tends to be sort of more 9 to 5 work, Monday to Friday. As I said, I work part-time. There was lots of practical components of this job, of this role. So lots of organising leases, sourcing furniture, knowing what's in the community to be able to get the best resources that you could get for the family, getting electricity hooked up, helping them with moving. We had stores of home goods that we gave to families as a package, because often they come with very little. So things like that you wouldn't even think about, like sheets and towels and tea towels and kitchen supplies, things like that. You might help them get their kids enrolled in school. You might transport them to appointments, because often they don't have transport, which can make life extremely difficult, especially in certain areas. But the overall aim of this job is to get people into maintaining or attaining long-term housing. So that involves working with the family or the person, the clients, look at the barriers as to why we haven't been able to get that yet. And the barriers might be things like not having a Department of Housing application, problems with maintaining a home, so cleaning and maintenance of a home. They might have a ticker listing, which is a Queensland term, which is sort of like a blacklisting on the private rental market, which you can work with them to have that removed. They might have outstanding bills or payments. You can work with them to have those reduced or addressed as well. But also, I worked with families and people in much bigger goals, not much bigger, because that's a very important goal, but much broader goals than that as well, such as getting them linked in with TAFE, having them linked socially in their communities, so getting them involved in local community events or community supports. Counselling, mental health supports were really important. Child safety was also a component of that as well. Getting them the right Centrelink payments, things like that are really important. And of course, as you're working with families in their home in such a vulnerable, scary position, you provide them with emotional support. So being that consistent, positive, supportive contact for them that can help them focus on the long-term goals and help empower them to take charge of their own situation is just absolutely crucial. So in order to be a housing support worker, the ideal qualification is the Diploma of Child and Youth Family Intervention.
Sounds very rewarding. So I'm assuming that there'd be some challenges though as well.
Indeed. We'll talk about challenges in a little while, because all of these roles certainly have challenges, which are important for students to know about. So the child safety support worker is another role, and it has a different name depending on the state that you're in, but in Queensland it's child safety support worker. And the role of that is to support the child safety officer. So obviously child safety or child protection is a government organisation, so that's different to non-profit in a lot of different ways. It's often full-time 9 to 5 and can have a lot more systems and bureaucracy than perhaps a non-profit charity-based organisation might have. Possibly less flexibility, but maybe more pay depending on where you're working. So just as a side note, it is really important that when you're choosing an organisation to work for, whether it be it government, non-profit, it's important that the values of the organisation align with your own. Because if they don't, and you're working every day and you're doing something in a way that your employer is asking you to do things a certain way, and that doesn't align with how you see the world and how you think clients should be supported or how workers should be supported, that's sort of a recipe for misery. So it is really important that you research the organisation and make sure that that is what you're after and that aligns with how you see things. But anyway, coming back to the child safety support worker, obviously child protection is the last line of intervention for children. So it's really serious stuff. It's that sort of tertiary end of support, the really pointy end of support. So it depends on the framework of the child safety service that you work for, but in the state that you work for, but there is a lot of family support, but child safety and wellbeing is the absolute priority. So there is certainly you might be involved in this role in removing children from homes, unsafe homes, and working with families to try and make the home safe for the child to return. So it's really difficult stuff at times. So it's really important in this role to build relationships with families. So you need to, families need to trust in the child safety support worker in order to engage in the services that you might refer them to. And that can be really tricky to navigate, but absolutely vital to the intervention that child safety gives to families. So you do lots of referrals. You might refer families to parenting programs, drug and alcohol counselling, other types of counselling, playgroup, mental health supports, all sorts of things. So you need to know what's out there in your community. You'd also in this role work with stakeholders. And there's often lots of stakeholders involved in a child's life. So you might work with family members, kinship carers, which could be a carer that's from within the extended family, resi care workers, paediatricians, GPs, counsellors, psychologists, the list goes on. An important part of the role is that you supervise a family contact visit. So a child who's in foster care might see their family once a week, and you might go along and supervise that visit to make sure the child is safe. And you might also assess and have a look at the family dynamics that are going on there to see where the family can be better supported. So that's a really important role. And in doing that, you might transport children around and pick them up and drop them off. There's a lot of driving at times. Also, as in all roles, you contribute to case notes and court documents. And this is very important because it might be lodged to the court and be an important part of the case that the child safety has. So you may also need to support families in court as well. So obviously this role is extremely important. You're advocating for the most vulnerable members of society. However, it can be really challenging seeing and hearing about child abuse and neglect every day, obviously. And there can be a risk of vicarious trauma in this role as well, which means that just by hearing all these stories, you might sort of have some symptoms of trauma yourself. So it is extremely challenging, but extremely important role, absolutely crucial.
You'd have support systems in place at the workplace, wouldn't you, for that kind of role?
Oh, certainly. Certainly there's tiers, as I said, bureaucracy, there's tiers of support, and they would all have free external counselling involved as well for all their workers, not to mention group supervision, individual supervision, all of that sort of thing. Yeah.
Great. So, leading on to, sorry.
Yeah, so disability support worker. So that's, as I mentioned earlier, where I started off in my career, and I figured out that I loved working with children and young people. So often non-profit organisations provide this sort of work. It can be shift work. So unlike the previous two roles, it can be big long shifts or short shifts. But I often work 24-hour shifts where you might start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and finish at 4 the next day, and you might do a sleepover. Or maybe you might get called in to do just the sleepover and stay awake all night, or to come and sleep at the house. So it's all very flexible work, which may or may not fit with your lifestyle. So I worked in a respite house for children, as I had mentioned, but obviously there's lots of different ways that you might work as a disability support worker. So you might work in a house, or you might work in a PCYC or another sort of support centre, or you might go out and support people in their homes or take them out on outings or different activities as well. So it's a really varied role as well. But either way that the role might present, you'd be following, or you might be contributing to behaviour support plans for your clients. So sometimes clients can show different physical behaviours, different safety behaviours. So when I was in the respite house, we had lots of clients that would try to do runners when we were out and about. So they just try and leg it. They'd try and leg it while we were out doing an outing or something. So that was good for us to know, because we had to plan and risk assess for that and come up with ways of being able to still have those needs met of going out into the community, but make it safe for everyone. So things like that are really important. When I was working in the house, I did lots of daily work. So cooking, cleaning, driving, shopping, all the stuff that goes into running a household. Also, giving clients medication was really important, and had to be very specific and precise with that for obvious reasons. Personal care, you might dress or shower or toilet your clients in this role. And you might do lots of outings. So we went to the movies all the time, we went to the park, community events, we went on the City Cat, we went swimming. But obviously all of those have those risks which you would plan for in your teams to make sure that safety is a priority for everyone. You might do other things like help your client with their routine. You might drop them at school or at work, or take them over to other houses where they can have hangout time with other clients or other kids. And also as part of this work, you do lots of case notes, incident reports, goal planning documents, and also reporting to parents and stakeholders as well, which is an important part of it. So that's the disability support worker.
I know also with the disability support at the moment, I know Queensland is suffering a shortage of disability support workers for the NDIS. Oh. So you could easily work under the NDIS for that as well.
There you go. And because it's so flexible, it's a great one to work while you're studying. Yeah. And it can be really well paid. As I didn't say that, it can be, because you're doing the 24-hour weekend shifts. The pay can be quite reasonable.
Also demanding as well.
And also demanding, yeah.
Yeah.
So the last one that I'll talk about is the residential care worker, which obviously is a topic of our presentation today, and the changes in trauma-informed care there and the mandatory requirements for that role. Residential care worker can also be called a youth worker, but specifically it's a youth worker that works within a resi care, so a resi care centre. So a resi care centre is where children or young people who have been taken out, removed from their families, and they're unable to be put into foster care or kinship care for whatever reason, they're put into a residential care centre. So that is where you will have youth workers working 24 hours a day to support the needs and care of the child or young person. And they might live in there in groups. They might be by themselves or with 2 young people, or up to 4 or 5, 6 young people maybe at a time, with the workers, sort of the right ratio of workers for that as well. So this can be shift work, often run by non-profit organisations. Shift work, so once again, similar to disability support work, can be 24 hours, can be sleepovers, very flexible, can be well paid. So similar in many ways to disability support work, but sometimes there's just different complexities between the two roles. A lot of children and young people who are in resi care have experienced a lot of trauma in their life due to child abuse and neglect. So they've been through the child safety system, they've been removed from their families and not able to be placed in foster care. So that's a really traumatic experience in itself. So these experiences can lead to some really complex behaviours and emotional responses from the young people. Some can be really explosive with their behaviours and very externalised, and some kind of turn it more inwards and can be quite anxious and engage in things like self-harm. So traumatised children and young people can engage in behaviours that keep themselves safe, keep others at bay. And this can be really confusing and frustrating for those around them, especially if you're trying to connect and work and and support a young person. And if you feel like they're always keeping you at bay, that can be really difficult to deal with. So teamwork in this role is everything. It's all about providing consistent, kind, and safe care over and over and over and over. That's what these children and young people need, and that's sort of involved in that trauma-informed care as well. Due to the chaos and uncertainty that many of them have experienced, consistency is key. So also in this role, you might do lots of practical work like the disability support work role, cooking, cleaning, taking young people to visits or to school or to the extracurricular activity, dealing with potential suspensions, shopping, appointments, personal care, all that sort of stuff. Emotional support is obviously a huge part of what you do as a resi care worker. So helping young people and children with their emotions, which sometimes can be really big. Building safe relationships to start to heal some of the past hurts that they've had in their relationships, and providing that really solid routine. So dealing with the dynamics between household members can be really challenging. Sometimes they can be a bad influence on each other. And that can be always a challenge for a resi care worker. So once again, the importance of teamwork and consistency. And so many resi care centres are really amazing at having regular team meetings to discuss what is and isn't working in the house, and update each other about what's going on around the young person's emotional state or behavioural state. So communication is really important in this role, but my goodness, it is such a dynamic and interesting and amazing role. So working in many of these roles can be challenging, obviously. People are really complex, and we're really complex too, because we're people as well. We bring our own stuff to the mix. So it is really important when you're working in these tricky roles that you kind of do engage in that self-reflection that we're always talking about in a lot of our assessments and a lot of our units. And you can do this through lots of different channels, including getting counselling or psychology support for yourself. Or you might do, journal writing, or just talk with a friend or engage in that sort of thing, just to help work through what might be going on for us as workers. Because sometimes the line between the client's problems and our problems can become very blurred. Sometimes we might do things that actually meet our needs rather than the client's needs. So being able to reflect and have a safe space where you can talk about those really big emotions can be really great. And you will get that through supervision through a lot of these roles, but having that extra support can be, I highly recommend it. But obviously being able to be that positive, safe attachment for a person, whether it is a child that you're working with or the parent of a child that you're working with, who's potentially never had this in their whole life, can be extremely meaningful and absolutely vital to break the cycle that a lot of these children and young people find themselves facing. So industry challenges, obviously it can be really emotionally challenging. There could be a lot to take on, and this sometimes might leak into your home life. Sometimes I would find myself thinking about clients on a Sunday afternoon and kind of getting a little anxious and thinking a lot about what's going to happen on Monday. So that can be a consequence of working in this area. But I always try to think of the old Buddhist metaphor, which is that we need to be a dustpan with a hole in it. So we need to hold the emotions and the issues that our clients face, but we also let it flow through us. We don't hold it forever. So that's something that helps me kind of work with people. And self-care, like I know we talk about that and we often roll our eyes around self-care, but it's just so important to be able to keep going. If your emotional cup isn't full, how can you possibly help fill up the emotional cup of someone else? So I do things like I never check emails at night or on the weekend. And back when I was working in a particularly challenging role, such as the child safety support worker, when I get home, I change my clothes and put on a new set of clothes, just to have that real definite line between work and home. Having these sort of practices early on in your career is really important to prevent burnout and to keep you passionate and to keep things rolling along really well. So some of the highlights, there's just so many, I couldn't even list them here. Obviously, it's amazing, this sort of work. So even though sometimes we can get really frustrated when the clients' issues that we're working with can be so complex and challenging, and we feel like that we're working so hard, and sometimes we might see our clients not change at all or even get worse. That can be really difficult. However, a highlight of the work that we do is that even really tiny improvements. So if you imagine someone's life sort of going on a trajectory of a line, if you can make a small support and assist that client in the tiniest little way, that can actually make a huge difference in the lifelong trajectory of that client's life. So small improvements can equal big changes, which is amazing to see. Obviously, the work is meaningful and satisfying. It's a really special kind of work, and it really is a massive privilege to be able to hear about the details of another person's life. And we often hear about it in a lot of detail. And if anyone who's ever actually attended a service before, you'll know how incredibly scary and what a huge step it is to be able to open up to a professional around your experiences, and how incredibly vulnerable it can make you feel. So for someone to be able to do that with you, and you can connect with them and be with them in that story, it's just amazing, amazing work. And certainly never boring. Like, there's always something happening, always something that we need to adapt to or problem solve or think about. And always that potential for us to work on ourselves and grow as people, as well as not only as professionals but individuals in this work. So I highly recommend it.
Great, thank you. Just a question with residential care. What age group did you normally have in the resi care?
In the resi care that I worked in, we had them. Well, I worked in a few, so we had them. It could be any age, really. Sadly, so we had them up from 7 years old up to 16, 17 years old. Yeah, it just depended on. It was a case by case situation.
Yeah.
So any age, yeah.
And so for students wanting to do placement in the industry, what's your best, like, what do they have to do? Where can they go?
Yeah, well, you have to do between 100 to 120 hours over the duration of the course, depending on what the qualification you're doing, whether it's a certificate or a diploma. So you can do this through volunteer positions or industry work. And we have a couple of different options that can be really, a lot of students have found really useful for doing their placements. If we just go to the next slide, we can see these are really great organisations that we work a lot with at Australis, and you can find more information on the little chat section there. There'll be a link to our Facebook page where you can get more information about how to sign up for volunteer work through these different organisations. But just briefly, the Pajama Foundation's a fabulous organisation, kind of like a big brother, big sister situation where you'll be paired with a child who's in foster care. And the idea is that you'll visit them on a weekly basis and help them with learning-based activities. So you might read to them out loud, you might help them with their homework, or do some other learning-based activity. So obviously that's all about building relationship and rapport and support with that young child or young person. PCYCs are always fabulous to get volunteer hours or your placement hours there as well. Obviously, they run a whole range of different programs for children and young people that you could be involved in. Resi care facilities can also take students as well. And also Grace Homestead is a wonderful placement that's sort of situated on the way between Brisbane and Toowoomba. And it is for mums who have a history of drug and alcohol addiction, and they're working towards being reunified with their children. So it's a wonderful place where the children can come and stay, and they can work on all the positive parenting approaches to support mums in the moment to support their kids. So that's a really fabulous placement that's always looking for volunteers as well.
Great, thank you for those insights. What's probably good is if somebody was interested in doing one of the courses, maybe volunteer beforehand, so they can get an idea of what it's like to be in that industry, because you can volunteer without having start your diploma. that would be a good idea, wouldn't it?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Like I said, just do as much as you can. If you have an interest in an area, absolutely do some work in there because you might change your mind. It might go somewhere completely different, but you don't know if you don't try. So
Yeah,
make it
that's right.
happen.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. Now I'm just going to hand over to Sky. She's one of our course consultants at Australis College, and she's just going to talk about the Certificate 4 and Diploma in Child, Youth, Family Intervention.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Melissa. So, with Child, Youth and Family Intervention, you can study either the diploma or the Certificate 4. Now, feel free to jump in. I'm sure Wendy or Melissa could agree or let me know if there's any difference. But with the Certificate 4, it's fantastic if you're looking to enter the industry and work in entry-level type positions. Whereas the diploma is going to help you with that career progression. So it will allow you to work your way up to more managerial and coordinator type roles. But something to take into consideration is that you are going to need to get some experience under your belt before you will enter one of those roles. So both of the diplomas will help you gain skills and knowledge to work effectively with a diverse range of clients in child protection and family intervention services. So I'm sure from listening to Melissa and Wendy's discussion earlier, everybody has gathered by now that child protection is a large part of both of these courses. You'll learn how to successfully manage all aspects of case management, how to work under supervision within a team environment, and of course provide support for this group of people. Okay, so at Australis College, you have two different study options that you can choose from. So the first option is the full course structure. This is where you can enroll into the full course with a full set course duration, set study hours per week, and set unit structure, meaning you complete your units of competency in an order that's structured by our head of faculty, Wendy Weber. With this study option, you have 7-day access to your trainer with complete support. All of your resources will be available to you through your student portal. So it's a typical course experience, it's just done online. Now, the second option that we have available at Australis College is quite different, and it's quite a new way to study. It's probably not as widely known yet in the education industry. So the second option is our subscription option. This option is a little bit different in that the option is most flexible and great for those who have extremely busy lifestyles and may not be able to commit to set study hours each week. It's also really good for people who are maybe working in the industry or have a lot of industry experience and feel like they can tackle the study more independently. You can use this study option to work towards your chosen qualification, or you can use it to learn and work on your professional or personal development. With this option, you pay a monthly fee to access the course content and pay for your individual assessment fees separately. If you're wanting to work towards a qualification, we set you up in the subscription and provide you with a course map so you know which subjects and topics you should be completing to work towards obtaining that qualification. Now, with the subscription, content only is $16 per month. So just as you would pay $16 to access a gym every week or every month, you'd pay $16 to access your content. Now that's content only, and we usually recommend content only for people who are working in industry or are familiar with the course content or have some community services experience. Content plus support is recommended for somebody who is fresh and looking to access the content plus be able to have support from their trainer. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you'll have your two different course pathways for child, youth and family intervention. So you'll have your Certificate 4. Now, the Certificate 4 is 12 months in duration. We do course intakes every Monday. So your course duration will be set up for you personally, but you'll have 12 months to complete everything with a recommended study commitment of 19 hours per week. Now, I do get questions quite often from students when they are inquiring, do I need to set aside 19 hours every single week? So what I find is that some students may get through some units faster than others, but on average, if you've got the 19 hours, you're setting yourself up for success. So you're setting yourself up to be sure to complete the course within the 12 months. Now, with the placement, you'll have 120 hours of placement for the Certificate 4, and the delivery is blended. So you will have access to your online student portal, which is called iTrain. That's where you'll find all of your reading materials, you'll have videos, and you have access to live classrooms every 2 weeks. I believe you can attend them more regularly if you'd like to. Is that right, Wendy?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yep, so we
Now
have
the
live
time-
classes. We have live classes every day, sometimes twice a day, and we have chats all throughout the day as well.
Fantastic. So as you can see, even though it's online, you do have quite a significant amount of support. And it's a little bit different to your traditional classroom-based environment in that you can go home and you still have access to your trainer. So you're not limited to a classroom time frame. Now, the cost of the course is $3,900. There are a few different ways you can pay the course. We do interest-free payment plans, and you may be eligible for some subsidies as well. And if you'd like to know more information on those, please comment in the chat pod, and I'll be happy to answer any questions for you or check your eligibility for you. Okay, now with the diploma. So with the diploma, the duration of the course is 18 months. So there's about 6 months difference from the Certificate 4. The study commitment is 18 hours per week. The same rule applies with the Certificate 4. So on average, you should be setting aside the 18 hours to make sure that you are going to graduate within the course duration. You'll have your 100 hours of placements. The delivery is blended, so still the same access to iTrain, full support from your trainer, live classrooms, chat, phone calls, and you'll also have access to videos as well. Now the cost of the course is $8,910. Again, there'll be a few different payment options for you. So there are subsidies available for this course. There's VET student loan, and of course you can access the interest-free payment plan through us as well. Now I do believe, and Wendy might want to add here, if you're unsure which course to start with, you can always start with the Certificate 4 in Child, Youth and Family Intervention, and then move into the diploma, and we can assess for any credit transfers as well if you were wanting to move through with the career progression.
Yeah, with the Certificate 4 as well as the diploma, it's actually got 16 units each, and there's a lot of crossover. So we've got the trauma-informed units and the residential care units in both, but you'll also find a few extras that are working with families that are actually in the diploma. So it actually depends on where you want to be, but you can easily start in the Certificate 4. And as Sky said, any credits, you go across and you don't have to actually do those units again.
Fantastic. And just to confirm, so all of the new industry updates and requirements are met by both courses, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So, university pathways. This is quite a popular question that we get from students when they're placing inquiries with us. So yes, for our diploma courses, it can help you and help you along your way with university pathways. I think Wendy's going to chat a little bit more about
Yes,
our
so
articulation agreement.
yes, so with the articulation, what happens is it's only for diploma students. So once you complete your diploma, if you're interested in attending those 3 universities and you might choose to do social work or maybe a child youth family studies degree, then what they'll do is they can give you up to 8 unspecified credits, which means that you may get 6 months off university and you don't have to then get that credit, and then you may only have to do 2.5 years.
Wow, that's such a long time, and it would bring a big chunk of university payments as well.
That's right.
Okay. Now, even though we have our university articulation agreements, you can still use the diploma to enter university. However, if you were to select a different university to the universities we have an articulation agreement with, it would be up to your admissions body in your state to assess and see what credit transfers you'd be eligible for. So on the screen, you'll see there's admissions bodies for Queensland, which is QTAC, New South Wales is UAC, and Victoria is BTAC. I believe the other states you can apply directly to the universities and they would be able to advise on how to do that. Okay, so the different payment and funding options. It will depend on the course that you are doing at the time. So if you do have one of the courses in mind that you're interested in, please contact the college or write in the chat, or you can send us an email and let us know so we can give you a personalised response to what payment option or what funding option you would be eligible for. To touch on a few, our payment plans are interest free and they're usually split up over the course duration. So it would be 18 monthly repayments for the diploma and it would be 12 monthly repayments for the certificate 4. We do have private loan options. Study Loans is available. They are a private loan provider and they're really fantastic for people that are working. Their interest is a lot lower than the admin fee that's charged by the VET student loan, which I'm happy to go into more detail with if you contact us. Now with the VET student loan, it's very similar to HECS. There's no upfront payments. You begin making repayments once you are working and earning over $51,957, and then your repayments come out alongside your tax. And higher level skills. Now, higher level skills has just become available for all of our Queensland residents for the diploma of child, youth and family intervention. And that can bring the cost of the course down quite significantly for you if you meet the eligibility criteria. So if you're watching and you're from Queensland and you have not completed a certificate 4 or above before, I would definitely encourage you to contact us and learn more about higher level skills. Okay, so that brings us to our question time. There was a fantastic question in the chat pod earlier for Melissa from one of our viewers, Jess. Now, can you see the question, Melissa? Or would you like
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
No, I can see it. No, that's a great question, Jess. So I think I talked a little about this, but yeah, it depends on the organization. But in my experience, in all of the roles that I've had, they've had really excellent support. So you just need to in this tricky sort of area. So yes, you would certainly get support from a supervisor. Sometimes you might have 2 supervisors. So you might have your direct line manager, supervisor, and then you might have more of a supportive supervisor that you see as well. So a lot of organizations are set up in that way. A lot of them have, as I think I've mentioned earlier, really frequent group team meetings and group debrief sessions. Yeah, so no, it's definitely definitely something that is part of the role is engaging in all of those sort of supportive parts of the agency. And I think, as I mentioned, I'm sure all of them would have free counselling that you could access as well as the counselling outside, which, as I said, is a really great thing to do if you think that that's for you as well. Yeah, so I found that both in government and in non-profit agencies that they're both quite good at doing that.
Fantastic. Now, I have a question that Wendy maybe could answer. So if I'm working in the industry already, how would you recommend that I go about updating these news? Could I pay for these units individually or do you recommend subscription?
Okay, so if you're working in the industry already, I would even look at recognition of prior learning, so RPL, because if you've been in the industry for longer than 3 or 4 years, you already have that knowledge. So that's one way. The other way, definitely subscription and only doing the units that you require. So for example, the residential units, so we listed it before, the MHS 007, the CHCCS 009 and the PRT 010. And that way you're still getting the requirements, but you've already got that knowledge. And subscription would be the cheapest way to go there.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay. Nobody
Not
else
sure
has
if
a
anybody's
question?
got any other
Anybody have
questions.
any questions? I think that's everything. Well, if anybody has any questions and you're watching and you would like them answered over the phone, you can contact us tomorrow. We'll be open from 8 a.m. on 1300 887 991. You can email us or you can go onto our Australis College website and you can submit a contact form on there also. Awesome. So I think that brings us to the end of the webinar. I'll hand it back over to Wendy.
Thank you. Thanks, Sky. Thanks, Melissa. It was really informative, and it's great to actually get more clarity around what those areas are and the different positions that people can have from this diploma or certificate. So thanks a lot for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. You were great.
Pleasure.
I think we lost Melissa there for a bit. Okay, thank you, everyone. And as Sky said, if you've got any questions, just give us a call tomorrow or email, and we're happy to help. Okay, thank you.
Bye.